Oh yeah, that's going to be a problem. All right, 2017 Nissan Armada, big boy. Supposedly warm. This thing will present some misfires. So before I get going to it too much, I have no DTCs. Fuel trims look pretty good. We can see here the monitors have been not completed, so I'm sure the codes have been cleared. If we go to read permanent, P0300 is in the permanents. But nothing pending right now. I don't feel any obvious misfires, but then again, we're not quite up to temperature and I need to drive this thing. Mode 6 has shown misfires in the past. The last 10 drive cycles, cylinder 1 and cylinder 2, and it says 13 on this drive cycle, so not sure what's going on there. I haven't felt anything, but we're going to drive this thing around and see what we can get this thing figured out. All right, so I've been driving this thing for a little bit. We got it up to temperature and we're now pending. We have a yellow. It is pending a P0300. It feels a little rough. Oh yeah, check that out. The check engine light just started flashing. It does not feel like a coil or ignition misfire. This feels mechanical to me. It's like the truck is lunging. It's not a direct misfire like ignition. So this ought to be interesting. But back here at mode 6, we'll reread it. And let's see. Oh yeah, it's really counting cylinder 1 and cylinder 2. So this is what I'm going to do real quick, guys. I'm going to put this thing in park. I'm going to go to the sharpshooter. This is kind of a neat little deal. I think this thing is mechanical, and while it's actively misfiring, we can do a quick relative compression check. Now, we don't have a sync or anything, but let's set this up. We can do 5-second crank. How many cylinders? We got a V8. All right, so I'm just going to hit start test. Let me turn this thing off. I'm going to hold it to the floor and start cranking. Yeah, it sounds a little funny cranking. Okay. We don't need to save that data. Okay. Pop-ups. Looks like we may have 2 low cylinders. That's very interesting. I'm going to have to sync these and check it with the Picoscope. I'm going to start doing a little bit of mechanical testing with this thing. So I'll bring you guys in on that. Alright, so I have a first look sensor in the tailpipe, and all these low pulses are misfires. And if we pause the scope, and let's back up one, and we zoom in a little bit, we put our overlay up, get it lined up here, you can see that they're falling in 1 and 2. So here's our freeze frame, or here's our mode 6. 76 and 102, so let's reread it. My fat finger's in here. And see, it's definitely recorded a few more because it's sitting here idling. I can't even hardly feel this car misfire, but it is definitely misfiring. It's still recording a few more. We have no codes, and we're definitely misfiring according to the first look sensor. So more testing to do. So I didn't film doing this capture here. This engine would only misfire really bad when it was hot. So when I got it back to the shop, I wanted to get set up quick. So what I've got is this gold trace up here is the first look sensor in the tailpipe. The green is my WPS transducer on a purge port. And I'm actually looking at vacuum. I'm not using a zoom mode. I like to look at actual vacuum numbers. The blue trace is a relative compression. I've got the amp clamp around the negative cable. And the red is a sync on number 2. And you probably noticed I'm using Pico 6. It's something about Pico 7. When you drag these cursors out, they put that colored banner in between each pulse, and for some reason I just haven't got used to that. But I'm working on it. So this is the capture that I really wanted to see something bad. Unfortunately, these things will only crank. This is a push button style deal. It only cranks for 5 seconds. And this is really all you get. This is a 5-second capture here. And you can see this thing is really all over the place the way it's cranking. I mean, it's got highs and lows and highs and lows and highs and lows. The exhaust is staying pretty good. My WPS is kind of going up and down with the tide there. And the reason I think this thing is doing that is because I have 2 low compression cylinders, and they're right back to back in the firing order. So my sync is on number 2, which is the red trace here. And you can see that number 2 is my low pulse. Well, the other cylinder I've identified as low is number 1, which is that one. So I've got 2 low cylinders, and then I have my recovery, and then the cranking cadence kind of smooths out, and then we repeat with the low. I mean, the next little video that you hear in the shop, you'll actually get to hear this thing cranking, and you'll see what I'm saying with the ups and downs. But I almost fell into a trap with this capture, guys. I ain't gonna lie to you. I wanted to see something wrong here because I am looking at exhaust pushes, intake pulls. I've got my relative compression that is telling me that I've got 2 low cylinders. I've already ID'd cylinder 1 and 2. The scan tool said I had low cylinders. My first look in the tailpipe says it was 1 and 2. Mode 6 says 1 and 2, and now this is telling me 1 and 2. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that blue trace off for now because it just adds to the madness. So let's zoom in here on one fire cycle, and let's pull up a waveform overlay. These overlays, I get asked a lot where I get them from. If you're a member of the Auto Nerds Pico group, stuff like this is included with your membership, I guess. There's a bunch of little apps and things, misfire, waveform, VE calculator. There's lots of stuff that one of the members made, and he put it out there for us all to use, and you will have access to it. If you need to become a Pico group member, click the link in the box, talk to Trevor, or ask me, and we'll get you set off in the right direction. So if we put that there, and we put this here, now guys, I'm going to tell you what, I'll give you a quick tip. I took this capture in the heat of battle. Do yourself a favor, if you've got an award-winning capture, take the extra couple of seconds and save it. If you start analyzing it before you save it and you accidentally knock your USB cable loose, you've just lost your award-winning capture. Don't ask me how I know this. So take an extra second, save it, look at it later. If it's garbage, then delete it. But I want to delete the captures on my terms and not if my USB cable comes out. That's a public service announcement from Carter's Diagnostics. All right, back on point here. So we're losing compression on 1 and 2. So number 2's peak compression is around in this area. And what I really wanted to see was some big, nice push right here, something really easy to identify, something I can say, absolutely, we've got a leaky valve. But I don't see that. Same thought process here. I got compression on one, and there again, I'm not seeing it on the intake side. If I look down here on the exhaust side, I mean, as far as the valve train is concerned, as much as I want to see something, I don't. So don't fall into that trap where you're zooming in like you're down in here going, oh, that right there is the problem. Don't try not to do that. I'm always say the devil in the details. But you sometimes you just got to back up and go, all right, I know I've got a mechanical problem, and at this point, I can't call spending that kind of money to get a cylinder head off this motor on what I see here. Now, one thing I do see here that I like, and this is why I use Pico 6 for stuff like this, is when I drag these rulers out, I'm going to put 720. Is the intake valve opening timing. It's nice and even. You'll see latency if you got valve training like worn cam lobes or little rocker arm bearings going bad. You'll see that kind of in this area, because remember, when this goes up, the way the WPS, the Pico WPS is, when this goes up, the intake manifold is less vacuum. And then as the piston goes downward, it starts pulling more vacuum. So every time you see a break upwards, it is a valve opening. So these are all the things that I kind of look for, regardless of a problem. And we can kind of see that with the overlay, because we know right here where the exhaust and the intake, this is kind of the overlap period, and you can see it kind of, each event kind of corresponds with the overlay. So I've got to move on from here. I really thought this was going to be the money shot. I don't see enough evidence in this capture, other than the relative compression check, that I have a valve train problem. So the next little video that I'm going to show you is in the shop. Excuse the little bit of shaking and all, because I'm really trying to get these tests done before this engine cools off, because this thing really only misfires really hard when it's hot. And I just came off the road kind of running it pretty hard, so I was trying to just get through these tests quickly. After that little video, then we'll go over the capture from it, and I think it's pretty cool. And then towards the end, I've got some other videos of the problem, and then I've got a little bonus stuff on the end, if you stick around that long, where I've actually used the pressure transducer in the cylinders, comparing bad to good. So let me get the next little video up, and then we'll go over another capture. All right, so I've done a little bit of compression checking and mechanical testing. And from my last test here, I've got my homemade first look sensor, and I'm on the dipstick tube right there. I've also still have a Senko number 2. I've been looking at intake pulses. I still have a first look in the exhaust. And I was checking out some secondary. Nothing really come up, so I'm going to sit you guys on the screen, and we're going to check for crankcase blowby. Alright, so the blue trace is obviously my crankcase blowby, so I'm going to save this file. I think I've found my problem. Did you see how wonky that thing was cranking? That was
That was the strangest cranking going on. So here we go. I have had the crankcase is going on here. I've got my sink still on number 2, and we'll go ahead and use Pico 7 for this. You guys tell me what you like to see on the screen better, and I'll do what I can to accommodate. So this is a homemade first look sensor, and I simply just stuck a little nipple in the dipstick tube, put a sink on 2, set a trigger, and started cranking. So we'll roll some rulers out, and for those of you that are not too familiar with it, I'll just go ahead and do it here. So I like to turn both of these on, and I've got a V8, so I'll partition it off. Here's the button here that I'm using, to 8 times, so that way it'll put a degree marker up every 90 degrees, because we have a firing event every 90 degrees on a V8. And then I'll line up there, and then I'll line up there, and don't worry, we can zoom in. Maybe not that far. And so that's what we've got. I don't know why these guys popped up, but they did. Uh-oh, I've lost everything now. Oh, we got a major meltdown. Should I stop the scope or just let you guys see this? We're gonna send it. That is what they call a major meltdown. You know you're doing stuff live when shit like this happens. And it only happens when you're doing stuff live. I may delete that, I don't know. But let's go ahead and reopen this file. That's one of the first times I've had this build crash. Where are we at? Crankcase. And if it does it again, I'm gonna have a meltdown. Okay, so let's go back to our rulers. Let's turn them on. I'm gonna exit out of this. I don't even know why that's up there. And let's go to there, and let's go to there. Okay, we're gonna get somewhere here, people, even if it kills us. We don't have enough rulers out. Man, I tell you what, this is really showing how amateur I am with Pico 7. So there we go. This is what I'm talking about, the shading. You see that? Instead of a line there, you got to look at the shading. I know that's being picky. Maybe if Pico's listening, hey, give me an option to turn that on or off. Or maybe you already have and I'm not using a new enough build. But anyway, here we go. So I'm synced on 2. We can see a distinct rise in crankcase pressure there, and then that is cylinder 1. It's the next one in the firing order, and then it calms down, and then it rears its head back up, and then back on 1 again. So kind of a fun diag. I love doing the pressure stuff. I was really wanting to see something in the valve train, but we found something here in the cylinder area. So what I've got is I've got 2 little videos where I took a boroscope and I stuck down in the cylinder. And I think on the second one, I actually went straight beside or straight down the cylinder with a 90-degree camera. And I'm on the exhaust valve side of the cylinder wall. And you can just see it all the way down. Probably going to get an engine put in this thing. It's an insurance adjuster's got to come by. This is just one of those weird things where I'm fact finding and other people make decisions. So that's where we're at with that. And then after that, if you want to stick around, I did, for the hell of it, put my pressure transducer in a cylinder number 2 and in cylinder number 6, which is good. And I did a little bit of in-cylinder stuff. We're just going to call that bonus. But this is pretty much the case study here. I guess the takeaway from it is, 1, save your captures. Don't let the USB cable delete your stuff. 2, if you need great Pico stuff, go to Auto Nerds, click the link, check them out. It also supports my channel. I get people asking me all the time, hey, what can I do? What can I do? Well, There's all kinds of little push buttons and super thanks and all that, but I can assure you that YouTube takes about 30% of that money. If you buy something from Auto Nerds, you get 3 things. 1, you help another small business. 2, you get something cool. And 3, it helps me out. So it's like win, win, win. And depending on how good your tax guy is, you might get a tax write-off for your tools. But that's up to you to decide. So thanks for watching this far. Glad you guys stuck with me. I hadn't put a video out in a while. But we should be getting going again. Got lots and lots of stuff. I've got some NVH stuff coming up. That is excuse my language, but that's some badass stuff, that NVH, man. That Pico NVH is something else, man. It's a lot to take in, but we'll get into that when I get into it. So I'll see you at the end for the bonus stuff. Have a good night. A lot of air coming out of the dipstick tube. That's where I was doing my testing. Figured I would try this for a little visual. Regular old rubber glove. It's kind of blowing it up. I'll release it. Squeeze it. Yep, 100% confirmed. We definitely got some blowby on this engine. I usually don't do it like this, but the insurance company or extended warranty or whatever, they needed more proof. I have all the proof I needed with the WPS captures and the first looks, but I had to go old school, put some air in the cylinder, and blow up a balloon. You guys, thanks for watching, and have a good one. Okay, so this is number 2. I went on and put the compression hose in the cylinder, and we'll just take a couple of quick measurements here. First off, one thing I noticed right off the bat is they're not even. And man, I'll tell you what, these things are just always in the way. So if we pick on the lowest one, now I gotta open it back up. I'm struggling tonight, guys. 185. So this red trace here is my first look in the dipstick tube. Let's turn a filter on. And you can see it just clearly corresponds with the compression peak. So this was the next day. This engine was really cool. This was actually in the morning. I didn't bother checking number 1 because it had to get really hot before number 1 started acting up. So I just was picking on number 2. I didn't feel like burning my hands off. I'll tell you something else I find interesting. And I wish I would have paid better attention to it, but if I put a little filter on the ignition sink, which is the blue trace, let me zoom in on that and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. But the ignition is after top dead center, and I think that's because this tower's leaning so bad, which will show you that. They always say don't check if you ever have a leaky cylinder, and this will go to tell you a leaning tower. Let me get some of this garbage off the screen here. We'll zoom into one here. And you may have heard the term leaning tower. Well, don't ever use or try to measure cam valve openings and stuff with an engine that has a leaning tower. And what does that mean? Well, if you kind of see, it's a little fatter here than it is here. It's leaning, and I think it made it a little bit late. I wish I would have checked. I'm going to show you another capture of number 6, which is good, but I did not put the ignition sync on number 6. I wish I would have now. But you can see it's firing after top dead center because I think this tower should be farther this way. But there again, that's what I think. This thing was cranking, and during this entire capture, I was not doing clear flood. I was disabling the fuel system. I wanted the butterfly closed. I wanted full manifold vacuum because I really thought I was going to find a valve leaking. So you guys help me remember some numbers here. Let's look at, let's take this blue thing out of the way. So maximum compression 186. And then let's look at the vacuum, or the exhaust pocket, shall we call it. 6.2, so that equates to about, you just kind of double it for inches of mercury, so that's about 12.4 inches of mercury. So 12.4, and usually on a leaning tower or a leaky cylinder, you have a deep pocket. And this one is bad, so 186 and 6.2. Let's check a good one. Where is it at? So this was number 6. I had to actually use a 500 volt scale because the compression went above and beyond. And I'm still synced on number 2 here. I really wish I would have. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. But we can still see our high compression peak, and there's still my sync on number 2. But we're at 226. And let's get rid of some of this mess off the screen. And we can kind of see that this tower is a little more symmetrical. I swear that thing is literally always in the way. And let's do a quick, let's zoom down, and we may have to add just a touch of filter to it. And let's see. So we noticed that expansion pocket is nowhere near as much. The other one was what, 6.2? This one's at 2.8. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a leaky valve. It can be washed cylinders. It could be scarred cylinder walls. You know, any of those things will produce a leaning tower. Anytime compression leaks out of a cylinder, because if you think about it, you pull air in here, you squeeze the hell out of it, well, it still better be in there when you come down through here. If it's not, then you're going to get a leaky, leaning tower and a deep pocket, because what is left gets stretched all to hell. So if you take in a gallon here, you squeeze it, you decompress it, you better still have a gallon on this side, or else you're going to get a deep pocket. I thought that was just kind of neat. I do stuff like this that obviously for YouTube, and then I do some hands-on training for different guys that come by the shop, or I'll go to other shops and show people stuff. Kind of the reason why I do stuff like this. So I certainly appreciate you guys sticking this out. It's been a long one. It was fun. Got to get my pressure stuff out, and you know, take my time. Kind of sort of got rushed a little bit, but take my time, dissect the stuff, and hopefully put on a good video for you guys. And I certainly appreciate you guys subscribing, liking, watching, sharing, all that good stuff. And I will catch you on the next video.